Hello, I'm your preacher pool man, Jonathan Jenkins. Welcome back to another episode of From the Deep End, coming to you today from Melbourne Shores, Florida once again. We are continuing our look at the topic of Christian mysticism. And today, we are going to start a series of lessons relating to or discussing the nature of the human spirit. Because I believe that is really at the heart of the entire issue. As we have tried to make the case, as we kind of define the topic and describe what I believe are some of the dangers within it, I've repeatedly made the point that I believe that the rise of mysticism among us is inexorably tied to the rise of thought of Calvinistic, at least leaning images or conceptions about the nature of humanity. Mystical thought requires that there be some need beyond rational thought for spiritual growth, spiritual development. It must then have the thought tied to it that there is some hindrance, some limitation, some lack of capability in the human spirit in order to reach the levels of spiritual enlightenment, the spiritual heights that God would have for it. And so without that limitation in place, the need for mystical thought and mystical assistance disappears. And then the fullness, the sufficiency of the revelation of God's Word is once again exalted back to the place where I believe it belongs. If that limitation does not exist, if the human spirit is capable of understanding the will of God and of applying the will of God and being transformed into His glory simply through the application of what God has taught, if that resides within the capability of humanity, there is no room, there is no need, indeed there is no basis for mystical thought in Christian thinking. And I believe that to be the case. For the first reason why I would suggest this is exactly what God said about the human nature when He made it. Go back to Genesis chapter 1 and go back to the creation. God gives you His evaluation of the human spirit when He makes it. You see, when He says, "Let us make man in our image, after our likeness," He's not referencing the physical form, obviously. He's not even referencing the base spiritual form of it, if you will, the life that is within it. Because all of the beasts of the fields have physical form, they have bodies, some of them passingly similar to ours. All of them have life within them. Whatever that is, whatever spark that gives life within it, that comes from God, they all had it. But they are clearly of a different nature than we are. They do not have the same capabilities. They do not have the same spiritual abilities to rise to higher levels. They simply don't. We do. God created us in our image, or in His image rather, after His likeness. We have the spiritual capabilities residing within us. That's what He meant when He looked around the garden, or He caused Adam to look around the garden. Adam himself recognized the distinction between him and all of the animals. Not until Eve came along did Adam recognize, here is one like me. Here is one that sustains a difference of image, a difference of nature than all of the other creation around us. You know what you won't find in that garden? You know what you won't find from the mouth of God in terms of that construct? You're not going to find any kind of intermediate. There's not going to be any intermediate life form between the beast of the fields and man. And there is no intermediate life form that God creates in between man and God. He says, "You are in my image." I would even argue that as wonderful, as powerful, as great as the heavenly beings, the angels, and all of their different forms are, they lack that. They are not made, at least it's never said of them. It said they are ministering servants sent out to do that, to serve. Never said they're in God's image. Humanity, you are the only one about whom that is stated. That is a high praise from God. It's stunning to me. It's staggering to me that the whole conception of some people's spiritual thought is that a being made in the image of God lacks the ability to do what God would have him to do. Is that not the entirety of the point? I'm going to make a being who has the same spiritual capabilities that I do. He has the ability, the same emotions, the same desires, the same passions, the same, at least the ability to have the same perceptions of things. And we'll talk about that some in the next episode. All of the things that God says about the human spirit show that He expects that spirit to make a connection with Him. It is designed, the human spirit is designed to find God. It's in His nature. If that spirit is separated from God, He lives and moves. He is calling us in that way to Him. It is part of our nature. And yet, so much of Christian thought is built upon the concept that, nope, can't do it. Absolutely, the spirit cannot attain to the design that God placed within it. I tell you, it makes no sense to me. I don't think it's practical. I certainly don't think it's biblical. And I hope you don't buy into it. If you are believing that about yourself, that you are somehow short of what God wanted you to be in terms of your creation, I think you need to reject that from anybody who tells you such. You have been made in the glorious image of God. You are fearfully and wonderfully made. Your spirit was given to you from God, and one day that spirit will return to the eternal Father who created it. Your spirit is intended to be transformed to be like His. That's its growth path. And you can be on it today because it's not beyond you. It's not beyond what you have the capability that God has placed within you. My pleasure to be with you. Look forward to being with you again next time here on From the Deep End. Thank you much.